Good morning, this is Dwayne, and today I'd like to talk about the 4 secrets of chord substitution. Some people call it chord reharmonization. It's all the same. Some people call it chord subs. It all means the same thing. We're finding a ways to freshen up our songs with new chord progressions. And there's probably more than 4, but I've discovered 4 rules or techniques that work really well. And I'd like to share those 4 with you right now. The 4 techniques for chord substitutions or reharmonizations are these. The first one is for any major chord, you can substitute the relative minor chord. For C major chord, the relative minor is A minor. Now, how do I determine that? Well, you simply go down a step and a half from the major root and build a minor chord there. So for any C major chord, you could substitute a C minor chord. I mean, an A minor chord. Let me illustrate. On Silent Night, normally you'd stay on C, wouldn't you? But I could go like this. C, A minor, C, A minor, and it gives a little different feel to it, okay? So that's rule number 1, or secret number 1. You find the relative minor of any major chord, and you can substitute that. The second tip, or the second insight about chord substitutions is this. For any melody note, you can simply ask yourself, into what other chord will this melody note fit? For example, the melody there, I'm playing Silent Night, so just as an illustration, this applies to all songs, by the way, not just Silent Night, but let me illustrate it with a song we all know. The melody's G, okay? But G's not the only, the C chord is not the only chord that G fits into, is it? It fits into the G chord, fits into the G minor chord, the G minor 7th chord, the E flat major chord, the A flat major 7th chord. Lots of chords it fits into. So simply ask yourself, into what other chord will this melody note fit? The great jazz pianist Errol Garner, when he wrote Misty, he started off with a chord substitution right there. You see, the chord is C major 7th that he eventually ends on. But before he hits C, he asked himself, what other chord does B fit into? And of course, it fits into the B chord, doesn't it? It fits into E chord, E 7th chord, all kinds of chords. But he picked B and then simply slid back up to C, okay? Again. You see that? So he asked himself, into what other note will that chord fit? Will that melody note fit besides C? And the answer was B, okay? So if I'm on Silent Night, let's say the melody's E there at that point, okay? Now I could go to that A minor chord, couldn't I? Or I could ask myself, what else does E fit in besides the C chord and A minor chord? Well, it fits into E or E 7th. It fits into E minor 7th. It fits into F. It's a major 7th of F. Let me do that. C, F major 7th, C, F major 7th. You see that? That fits, that works very nicely. So I simply ask myself, into what other chord does this melody note fit? So that's insight number 2. The first one was for any major chord, you could use a relative minor as a substitute. The second one was ask yourself, into what other chord does any given melody note fit? The third tip is for any dominant 7th chord, you know, a 7th chord like C 7th or G 7th or F 7th or any 7th chord, you can substitute the chord that's a 4th below and build a minor 7th. For example, if you're substituting C 7th for C 7th, go down a 4th from C and build a minor 7th chord. And G minor 7th will substitute for that C 7th chord, as long as the melody doesn't conflict it. Let me illustrate. Now this is C 7th, but But instead of C7th, I'm going to use G minor 7th. And then I can resolve back to C7th. Okay, so before I play the C7th, I'm going to play G7, G minor 7th, and then I can go on to the rest of the song. Okay, so that's the third rule of chord substitution. Anytime you have a dominant 7th chord, substitute the chord that's a 4th below and build a minor 7th. If the chord was G7th, for example, what's a 4th below G? So I could use D minor 7th as a substitute for that G7th chord, couldn't I? Let me do that on Silent Night so you can see how I do it. That's the first chord substitution. I substitute a relative minor for the major. That's the second one. I ask myself into what other chord will this melody note fit. Now the next melody note is D, but the chord is G7th. Now the rule was for any dominant 7th chord you can go down a 4th and build a minor 7th. So in other words, D minor 7th will work as a substitute for that G7th, and then you can resolve back to that G7. Okay, let me take it that far. Now here's a dominant 7th, but I'm going to substitute G minor 7th, go down a 4th and build a minor 7th, and that brings up the 4th secret. You can use a half-step slide. You see, I was on G minor 7th. I could resolve back to C7th before I go into F, and you normally would. That's a good choice too, but what I chose to do there was I just went down by half steps. I did a half-step slide down from G7th to G flat 7th, and then down to F. Okay. That's a relative minor for a major. That's D minor 7th for G. Here I'm asking myself what other chord will that melody note fit in. Here's another one. The melody is F, isn't it? But I'm gonna ask myself what other note does F fit in? What other chord does F fit in? And one chord it fits in is B flat. So I used B flat. And the last note, the last chord of if you're playing Silent Night in the key of C would be C, but I'm going to ask myself what other chord will C fit into, and one solution is A major 7th or A flat, and then D flat, it'll fit in D flat as the 7th too, and then end on C. Okay, so I just used those 4 rules of chord substitution or reharmonization as I went through Silent Night, and I illustrated on Misty too, but remember you can do this to any song at all. For example, if I was playing Misty and I came to this this section, let's see, let me play it that far. This is the section I want. The chord is C, but I'm going to play E minor instead because E minor, the G chord, the G melody note fits in E minor, and then I'm going to go down to E flat 7th because it fits in that too. Then I'm going to go to D minor 7th, and I'm going to go to D flat 7th. You see that? So with that makes a nice sequence as kind of a turnaround at that point in the song. Well, there's quickly 4 secrets of chord substitution, and you may say, wow, how can I master those? Well, you can't, but you can take them one at a time and work them out on the songs that you like, and just think about mastering one at a time, and you may, in fact, you don't even have to use all of them. You can just use a couple of them or one of them, and you'll create some new sounds, so you'll freshen up some songs that other people play differently just by creating some fresh new chord progressions for yourself. So that's it for today. If you enjoy these kind of piano tips, come on over to playpiano.com and sign up for our free piano tips. Did I mention they're free? So come on over and sign up for those at playpiano.com. Thanks. See you there. Bye.